Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
And so
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Today, we're going to talk about a simple nutrient can make a big difference in stopping cancer anywhere in the body, interfering the process. We'll also be looking at the latest research on how fasting can improve multiple sclerosis symptoms and a lot more. All from quality journals, peer-reviewed, from major institutions. Then we're going to open up our phones to look at several issues that I believe are important that are not getting objective treatment in the mainstream and, for that matter, in alternative media. For example, Trump's EPA approves the use of a nerve gas pesticide. How smart is that? Well, we're going to talk about that and the fact that we shouldn't be using pesticides at all. And what can we do to prevent pests and actually have healthier crops and healthier soil? And then we're going to hear a clip from a person who believes, as I do, that we should be raising wages. It does not kill jobs. It actually increases the capacity of a person to have a single job, live in an environment, be more stable, and be able then to have extra money to pay for the things that are important for them, whether it's medications or food or housing, their children. So they're not broke. They're not in debt. Can American business afford it? Oh, yeah. They are spending billions of dollars, frequently per company, in buying back their own stock to increase the value of the existing stock so that their executives can get higher bonuses. So how difficult would it be for them to allow their workers to get a better wage per hour? It wouldn't. It's just selfishness. We'll deal with that. And also, rarely, if ever, do people take a look at what do we need in the way of a government. We need government. We need government that we control, we the people, that has oversight, civilian oversight. We need to eliminate a lot of governmental agencies. We have 17 intelligence agencies. We need one. We need to demilitarize many of these agents. There's no reason that people should be carrying guns and have the ability to arrest people because they work for a particular agency. So we have massive overgrowth of the government. And there's not a word about this. Could you imagine going into a store because you needed just a lid to a toilet, right? The lid that you pull down when you want to flush the toilet or pull up when you want to use it. What are you going to spend on it? $20? Maybe $30? What if I told you that the Air Force is spending $10,000 per toilet lid? That's it. $10,000 just for a lid. This is how out of control. Now, I have over 10,000 examples of how the government is spending money, our money, with reckless disregard that we don't need. There are instances where the Pentagon will give 10 bids for the same identical workout and then give it to all 10 companies. And almost always people who were formerly with the Pentagon or Defense Department or generals or admirals made that happen. That's our money. And yet, on the other hand, they're claiming that they have to cut back on Social Security, which, by the way, let's be very clear on this. Social Security is not an entitlement. The government doesn't pay a penny. Not one nickel has the government ever paid in Social Security. You and I pay that. Employers pay it. The government doesn't. And yet they've taken over $2.6 trillion out of the Social Security fund to invest in their wars. Ronald Reagan started it, and it's just accelerated. So they don't have money to increase any of the benefits. They don't have money for universal health care, they claim, but they have all this other money. So we're going to give you just a little sample, a 4-minute sample of a United States legislator kind of going off the rails. He let it rip because he found out about how a governmental agency went on a meeting, and instead of going to a building in Washington, D.C. or a local restaurant, they went to Las Vegas. But then they had to have 10 different people go to Las Vegas to see how to do it, all of which cost a lot of money. And then how much money they spent. It shows how corrupt the government is and how it's not working out for our interest. Now, criticize the government, criticize an agency, and see how quickly they respond to you. Watch your income taxes get audited. Watch suddenly become a target. And yet we're doing not a single thing about it, left or right. And then Americans pride themselves on their level of education and their knowledge of things. Well, I don't know which Americans they're referring to because there are an awful lot of dumb Americans. We're ignorant about a lot of things, and the trouble is we think we're smarter than we are. So we decided to talk with some people on the streets. In fact, make it a little better. Talk with some people at a college campus. You won't believe the results. So we have a lot to share with you. Let's begin. From Washington University School of Medicine, good news. They have found that fasting improves multiple sclerosis symptoms. And that is very important because a lot of people are never told a good diet can make a difference. They're just told, well, just eat a regular diet. But the evidence is there. People who are on a healthy diet, doing lots of juicing, and also periodic fasting, and you can actually have a juice fast. You could take a day, and you could have your nutrients like your plant-based proteins, your essential fatty acids, especially coconut oil is very good, and black cumin seed oil, and you put all this in a smoothie, and then you drink your smoothies throughout the day and juices throughout the day. We don't do that in the United States. We should. It would help us. Fasting is one way to rebalance your metabolism. That would be important for people who are pre-diabetic or diabetic. It would certainly help people with cancer. And then that's not even adding in the nutrients we know can turn off inflammation in the brain, in the spinal column, in the central nervous system, and then to rebuild it. So that's important. Also, I am a very big believer in curcumin. Cure, C-U-R, cumin, C-U-M-I-N. It comes from turmeric. Some people take turmeric. In India, people take turmeric because it's an inexpensive herb. It's absolutely almost in every dish you eat. It's what gives that yellow color to the food, and it has its own unique flavor. But within turmeric, there is a fraction, and it's not a large fraction, that is bioactive. That's your curcumin. So if you want the benefits of turmeric, take curcumin. You'll get a lot more power out of that. And one of the things we've seen in tens of thousands of studies on curcumin is its influence on cancer. Now, according to just this week, the University of California, San Diego, as well as Peking University and Zhejiang universities in China, through X-ray crystallography and kinase inhibitor specialty profiling, they have found exactly how curcumin impairs cancer. This is important because it does. They have not always known. They knew it did. They just didn't know what was the biochemical interaction of curcumin that leads to inhibition of the DYRK2 that impairs cell proliferation, meaning it reduces cancer's ability to spread. Now they had that. So one more reason that a simple supplement, inexpensive and natural, can make a big difference in helping the body, especially for cancer, but it turns off all kinds of inflammation. I recommend it for everyone with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, multiple sclerosis. Very important. Now, another nutrient that's very important is ginseng, Ginseng. Why? It helps with fatigue, and especially chronic fatigue syndrome, very important, Lyme's disease, and the Mayo Clinic and Oregon University School of Health and Sciences did a review. And why? Because millions of people with chronic illness suffer from fatigue, and fatigue is a complex multidimensional symptom with poorly understood causes, and there's wide variations in severity among individuals and negative effects on multiple domains of life. And many patients with fatigue report the use of herbal remedies. Well, ginseng is the most widely used because it's believed to improve energy and physical and emotional health. And so this was a review to see, does it work? And they were using two types, Panax, P-A-N-A-X, ginseng, and the American ginseng. And when I grew up in West Virginia, one of the ways that you earned extra income is you went up into the hills. That's all of West Virginia, by the way. Everything is up and down, up and down, up and down. And you, on the side of hills, you can find red ginseng, which was very expensive. And if you spent a day and you were able to fill up a half a knapsack, it was worth about $300 back then. Today it'd be about $3,000. So it takes a long time to grow, years to grow, but it's extremely beneficial. And there's different types of ginseng, but there's a lot of studies, thousands of studies. So what they did, they looked at 149 studies in the peer-reviewed literature, and they reviewed it, and their conclusions are that, yes, indeed, ginseng does help with fatigue. Both American ginseng and Asian ginseng. They're viable treatments for people with chronic fatigue and chronic illness. And it's called an adaptogen. It adapts inside the system. So if you are fatigued, I don't recommend you buying the commercial packages because it could have sugar in it, and you don't know how much actual ginseng you're getting. They're probably giving you milligrams or grams of the total weight of everything in there. So instead, take the ginseng capsules where you're getting an exact amount of the purified ginseng. That way you're getting what your body needs. Also from the University of California to Irvine, they found that milk thistle, the extract, is extremely beneficial for human liver cancer. It acts against liver cancer. Now, we've known that it's good if you have toxic liver, but now they took a look and found out that there's more than 500 life-sustaining actions for the body, including those that are related to neutralizing toxins that the liver performs. The liver is the largest internal organ, and it's critical to processing and functioning. For example, it will conjugate toxins and take them out of the body. It will metabolize nutrients and then set them forth into the bloodstream so your body can use them. So you want a clean liver. You want a healthy liver. And so milk thistle helps that process. Just one more thing that we can take in that can make a difference. Also, for those of you who are doing your exercise every day, good. McGill University, which is up in Quebec, Canada, took a look at exercise, and they found that 15 minutes of nonstop exercise creates optimal brain state for mastering new motor skills. So here's the takeaway message. If you want to learn to walk a tightrope or play chess or an instrument, if you want to learn a new language, it's always best if you go for a short workout, power walking, jogging, biking, after each practice session. And that's because a recent study in Neuroimage, the peer-reviewed journal, demonstrates that exercise performed immediately after practicing a new motor skill improves its long-term retention. More specifically, the research shows for the first time that as little as a single 15-minute bout of cardiovascular exercise increases your brain's connectivity and efficiency. It's a discovery that could, I believe, accelerate recovery of motor skills in patients who have suffered a stroke or who face mobility problems following an injury. So let's say that you want to learn a new word. And so you study a word that's practical and a word that you could use, and a word that you may not normally use, may not even know what a hegemony, for example. How many people know what hegemony is? You know, it's based upon the principle of power over. And so the United States is engaged in hegemony around the world. So if you study the word, you look at its context, and then you have it in mind. Okay, I know the word, and I know the context it can be properly used in. Now go out for an exercise. Go out for a 15-minute jog, power walking, biking in high gear, resistance, and that reinforces that memory. Same way with a foreign language. So it's very important. Brand new, something we didn't know, and now we do. And they're looking at in the University of Illinois, they were looking at these highly processed foods on the menu for breakfast and lunch and dinner. And they were looking at grains, which are normally high in vitamins and minerals and phenolic compounds and fibers. And then this was published in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry. Then they look at what happens when you process it. Well, what happens is that when you process it, a lot of these very important things, like in corn, organic corn is good for you. And they found in that kernel of corn high concentrations of phenolics and ferulic acid and cormaric acid. These are important for you. But the more you process it, the less of these you have. So when you go from corn to corn flakes, you're removing an awful lot of the important minerals and phenolics. The more processing you do, the less nutrition you have at the end. The more you cook something, the less nutrition you have. You deep fry something like French fries or anything else and deep fry, you're just destroying the antioxidants. So the closer to its natural state. Now that doesn't mean you have to eat corn raw. You can put corn and steam it for 5 minutes. You don't destroy any of the nutrients, but you speed up the ripening of the sugars from the more complex starch and makes it sweeter. Broccoli, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, same way. You're not going to eat them raw because they're far too pithy, and you're eating too much ligocellulose. Your body quite simply is not going to be able to absorb the nutrients in it. But if you steam them and then put them into any dish you want, you're liberating by breaking down, just slightly breaking down the cell wall so that the nutrients inside the cell will be released. So when you're chewing something, more of it's going to come out. You're going to be able to get the benefit. And by the way, I saw an article that parents are taking out children's tonsils or adenoids, and that's a good thing. It's not. It's a bad thing. Why? Because the actual science shows that when you remove a child's tonsils and adenoids, you increase the risk of 28 diseases. And while the conventional medical establishment calls for the removal of so-called broken or defective body parts, there is a tremendous amount of scientific literature on the long-term effects of tonsillectomy and adenoid removal calls into question the proprietary nature of surgery. And they're operating on over 500,000 children a year for these, and it's not necessary in most cases. And it's actually putting them at a very high risk of other conditions. So that is the latest on health nutrition. We're 20 minutes into our program. We're going to take a break and come right back. Please stay with us.
Stone love.
For those of you who were not able to listen in last night to the Progressive Commentary Hour, and because we have so many people who do not have access to the Internet, I will be playing last night's program on our sister stations around the United States this coming Friday. I had 3 experts who had a forum. Each is recognized in the field of artificial intelligence, and they were talking about the weaponization of artificial intelligence, the dangers of creating something that exists now, right now, today, that we can't control, and gave examples of how dangerous it could be. We're not looking at the downside of this, and we should be. How many jobs it could remove, and no one is looking at what to do for those people who would lose their jobs. And that brings me to this thought. I come from West Virginia. I grew up there, Parkersburg, lived in Wheeling, Weirton, West Virginia. And they're good people in West Virginia. I'm glad I had the benefit of growing up where you were held accountable for certain moral behavior and character. And I saw what I considered a lot of people have the same background when they're raised in a neighborhood or a town where everyone knows everyone, and there's a sense of community and purpose. Now what you see when you drive through West Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee and parts of Pennsylvania is you see poverty where communities have been abandoned, but people still live there. They just don't have any income. Whatever public assistance they get, that's it. And they're so depressed that the older people drink and the younger people take a lot of drugs. In fact, it's the opiate capital of America. Throwing those people in jail is no solution to anything. They're already damaged. And they're damaged because we're not looking at who's behind all of this. Behind almost the vast majority of our problems is corporate America and vulture capitalism. Companies have made enough money that they could have done 2 things. They could have educated the people in a new career while still working in their existing ones and made a transition. People have to eat. And the great breadbasket of America has got multiple problems. The great Ogallala water aquifer is running low. Within the near future, it'll be too low for most of the states to benefit from it, right now including Texas. Also, the heat is so high in Kansas and Indiana, Illinois, South Dakota, and Colorado that it's changing the growing season and what can grow. Massive floods, and this is due to climate change, floods we've never seen before. For example, did you know that in Japan, lots of people have died, hundreds have died, because the rain was so torrential that the normal systems of taking the rain, the floodwater out through the cauldrons were overwhelmed. And this is something we're seeing all over the world, where the amount of precipitation, the amount of water collected in the clouds suddenly drops it. And it drops it in a way that you're going to have flash floods, you're going to have landslides, and you're going to have vehicles swept down streams, people killed. We've never seen anything like this. Guy McPherson predicted this 4 years ago when he said we had about 12 years before we see the beginning of the collapse of our society. And that's the way it is right now. And it's accelerating, because now we found out there are 119 volcanoes, many of them active under Antarctica, and it's melting faster than ever before. They had the hottest recorded ever at this time in Siberia just 4 days ago, and in the Arctic. So all this is accumulating. Just 2 days ago in Arizona, a huge sandstorm, miles long and miles high, destroys all the crops. If you have seedlings, they're gone. If you have trees that are budding, all those buds are going to be destroyed. So with how bad it is, and by the way, for the first time ever in Colorado, and I've appeared, I guess, 35, 40 times on PBS stations out there, Colorado Public Television, and they played just one of the documentaries on this Seeds of Death on genetic engineering over 80 times, because people were interested. That's what the program director told me. They want to see this. They're not getting this on the mainstream media. But I said, you're in the wrong place right now. Colorado is not sustainable. It's running out of water. You've got one of the largest beetle infestations in the high Rockies. And as the trees die off and the grass dries, it's all ripe for fire. And then it came. For the first time, they said that a firestorm, never heard that before, in Colorado, they're calling it a fire tsunami. Get this. This is just over the weekend. They said that the flames were 300 feet high. And as the fire chief said, there's no way we can stop it. Yeah, how do you go out and fight a 300-foot high flame wall coming at you? It burned everything in its path. It's not even in a news cycle. Not even in a news cycle. Just like Fukushima, the worst environmental disaster in world history, not a single word about it. And yet it's spewing radiation 24/7, and now orcas are dying, and they're almost extinct, orcas, because the water's too hot and the food supply is gone. All these different things are happening and no one's paying attention, as if that's not important. It is. So we have to eat. So I would have suggested to the people who own the coal mines, why don't you transfer from coal, which is not profitable to begin with and a major polluter, and gives these poor miners black lung, and why don't you shift over to hydroponics, massive hydroponics? And that way you train these people how to grow food 24/7 indoors, no rain, no drought, no problem. It can grow, and everybody's got to eat. And even if every American were fed, which they're not, we have over 50 million Americans who are food insecure, 18 million of those are children, you could export food throughout the world. In any case, we're not doing any of this, and we should. We should be looking at industries that are not coming back and that should be closed down, like the fossil fuel industries, but also from a humanistic point of view, from a caring for our neighbor and friend point of view, train them in the skills that will help them survive. Right now, there's 7 reasons to go to college, and if you're not in those 7 fields of study as a specialty, I wouldn't recommend anyone go to college for any reason except those 7. You're not going to have a job, and whatever job you're training for right now, robotics and artificial intelligence are going to replace it, or someone coming in with a PhD from India, or very good people, you can't blame them. They're intelligent, they're willing to work for $40,000, $30,000 a year So we're not telling college students the truth. We're in the big lie, because we want to give everyone the idea that as long as you get an education, everything's great. There was a time when that was true, not today. I would take those same kids and say, don't go to college unless you're going to become X, Y, and Z. Instead, let's get you into some crafts. Let's get you to go to some schools to learn welding, carpentry, masonry, framing, roofing, concrete. Let's get you these skills, plumbing, because there's always a need for those. In fact, there's a greater need. Right now in Florida, you have more work than there are carpenters in the United States in its entirety to do it. Right now, if you want to fix a roof, you've got a year to a year and a half wait. And there are millions of homes because of the hurricane that tore it up. And that's before the season even starts. And you can believe there's going to be another category 4 or 5. And yet people are going to college to get a liberal arts degree or get a degree in something that they're not going to have a job for. We're just not using common sense. So let's start looking at what we can do and also how we can train people. And by the way, where did the jobs go? Let's be just clear on this. The jobs didn't disappear. Corporate ownership decided it would make more profit for them and their shareholders if they outsource those jobs. So over the last 40 years, they've outsourced hundreds of thousands of jobs. Actually, it's closer to 5 million just since 2000, and closed down tens of thousands of factories. But they did not retrain people. They did not help get them new placement. They left these people unemployed, unqualified in anything else, in debt, in a Rust Belt town. So we should also be setting up a fund, a zero-interest fund, that anyone who can open up a business to employ 5 or more people would be able to get an interest-free loan that they wouldn't have to make any repayments for 3 years in a local community, and people within the local community who are already there, let's say legacy businesses, would be on a board that would evaluate the need and practicality of that business. You could employ at least 15 million people over a 5-year period, opening up new businesses at the local level, and that's what we should be doing. We're giving welfare to corporations that shouldn't get it, and no subsidies to those who could use it and deserve it. That's what's wrong with the system. Now let's go to this. This is showing you how utterly in contempt of science, ethics, and public health this administration and this president is when concerning the Environmental Protection Agency. This is a short clip, but it's important you hear it.
There's one common denominator to Donald Trump's environmental policies: their total and blatant disregard for the health and well-being of all Americans. Take what Trump and his EPA administrator Scott Pruitt are doing with chlorpyrifos, a toxic pesticide made by Dow Chemical. Chlorpyrifos is part of a family of pesticides adapted from nerve gases made by Nazi Germany during World War II. Today, Dow is the main producer of the chemical. In a powerful New York Times article, Nicholas Kristof dubs chlorpyrifos Dow Chemical Company's nerve gas pesticide. And that is exactly what it is. Dow Chemical is selling this nerve gas pesticide, and it is all over the fruits and vegetables we consume. The result, as you can imagine, is devastating. In 2012, academic researchers tested the blood and umbilical cords of babies from a farming community in California. The nerve gas pesticide was present in 87% of the samples. In other words, almost 9 out of 10 babies were exposed to a dangerous nerve agent before they were even born. And even in minute doses, it does exactly what it was originally designed to do: damage the human nervous system. Scientists have now demonstrated that Dow's nerve gas pesticide increases the risk of learning disabilities, reduced IQ, and links to autism and ADHD. Back in 2000, the EPA said that Dow's nerve gas pesticide could no longer be included in roach sprays or other household products. Even though the dangers were clear to create that ban, it didn't limit it from agricultural use. So today, Dow's nerve gas pesticide is on our food. It's on everything from apples and berries to corn and broccoli and almonds. It also ends up in our drinking water and it gets into our bodies. Last year, EPA proposed to finally ban this nerve gas pesticide once and for all because the evidence of harm is just overwhelming. Then came Donald Trump and Scott Pruitt in a curious sequence of events. First, Dow Chemical donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund. Then, Dow Chemical's CEO, Andrew Liveris, got the top spot on Trump's American Business Council. And next, Scott Pruitt announced that Dow's nerve gas pesticide would not be banned. It's always suspicious when an EPA administrator overrules the agency's own scientists. In this case, it's downright dangerous, especially to our children. NRDC is suing to get Dow's nerve gas pesticide out of our food, water, and farms. And there's a bill pending in the Senate to overrule Pruitt and finally ban the nerve gas pesticide. I hope you'll join me and NRDC's 3 million supporters in standing up against Donald Trump, Scott Pruitt, and Dow Chemical. Please take action through nrdc.org. Our health and our children's health need protection now more than ever.
I fully support this effort. Please get on board. This is something we need. We need to not use genetically engineered foods. We need to eat organic and, wherever possible, support local farmers, food co-ops, small little health food stores. Now, we're going to hear, and I just got word we have someone who's made some strong improvements and has medical verification. I haven't spoken with him, but we'll speak to him after this clip. But this is something that I believe. First, historically back in the 1950s, the highest tax rate for Americans was up around 90%. But don't be fooled by that. I'm opposed to these high taxes, but I'm also opposed to getting rid of these taxes the way we have. One of the largest, if not the largest volume in the United States codes is the IRS code. Last time I checked, it was over 58,000 pages. It's probably a lot more now. And here's how it works. If you're wealthy, if you're a major corporation, you pay little or zero taxes. In the case of General Electric, you actually get money back. I think in 1 year they got $5 billion back in refunds and or carry forward expenses. But what about, didn't they make money? Of course they made money. And they can hide everything, all the private jets they use, all the conferences, all those luxurious resorts, all the bonuses, their lobbying fees, everything is deductible. Well, that's not fair. You and I can't do that. No. And if you're a small business person in New York or California, you really get thumped because you have to pay personal income tax in the state, then you have to pay taxes twice. So you're up around 60% and you don't get out of that. So what is the solution? The real solution to bringing more money into the U.S. Treasury and having that money used to help the people and not bail out corporations is you have a flat tax. Something is very reasonable, something like 15%, even go to 20% if you want. But then you can eliminate the Internal Revenue Service, you can eliminate all the keeping receipts and audits because nobody can get out of it. That way, by my estimate, we would bring an additional $2 trillion into the Treasury and eliminate a whole government agency that's been corrupted all along, and the right of the rich and the powerful to evade taxes, or avoid taxes, I should say, and then they park trillions of dollars in out-of-the-country bank accounts. So we're not doing that. We should. That should be something we should focus on. One low, flat tax that no corporation can get out of. And then if communities want taxes, then tax in an accelerated way. For basic items, you pay the lowest sales tax, and for luxury items, you pay the highest. So if you want something that's luxurious and you can afford it, fine, you pay, and that money goes to the state and local communities. And then make your government accountable. By the most optimistic figure I can find, and I've gone through this meticulously, the United States government should not be giving the Pentagon or Defense Department more than $200 billion a year. That's all it actually needs to protect us. All the rest of that is just profit for corporations. Over 200,000 military corporations know how to exploit the system. So we need to stop all these people feeding at the trough of the American consumer when we're not given anything in return in public services. Our lands are polluted, our water's polluted, our forests are being, and national parks are being exploited for commercial drillings and timbers taken out. So we need to stop that. Our existing corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats, the machines, they're not going to change. No matter what they say, they lie. So we need multiple parties. We need justice parties, peace parties, green parties. We need at least 10 or 20 parties that represent the people and then build coalitions and share certain interests where we can build a strong momentum forward. That's what we need. That's progressivism. So when it comes to this idea that these people, corporations, can't give people a living wage, then what are you supposed to do? Where are you supposed to pay how are you supposed to pay your rent? If you're not smart enough to give them, universal health care, then what's going to happen when there's an accident and they need money to pay for that? What are you going to do? Are you going to help them? The answer is no, they're not going to help you. Let me just give you one example. This is a real example. This is what happens when you don't have universal health care, where you have to pay for it out of your own pocket. There was a couple who their young baby fell off a couch and bumped his head. They looked at it and they took it to the hospital. And in the hospital they took a look and the kid was fine. And so they just gave the kid back to the mom and they gave her a bottle of formula. That's it. Nothing more. Kid is told, the parents, take your kid home. It's just got a little bump there, and it'll be fine. Okay. 2 months later, they get the bill. $58,000. $58,000. This was in the San Francisco hospital. $58,000. Wow. And then they charged some outrageous amount, like $15,000, just to be seen by a trauma doctor for 5 minutes to determine there was no trauma. And they add in all these expenses. A snake bite, $154,000. Bypass surgery in the United States, average $78,318. Bypass surgery in United Kingdom, $24,000. Well, how can you get the same surgery in the United Kingdom for $24,000, $78,000 in the United States? Hip replacement in the United States, $87,987. And the same hip replacement in New Zealand, $15,400. Or you go to the United Kingdom, $16,000. Big difference between $88,000 and $15,000. That's what happens when you don't have universal health care. And that's ridiculous. We should have universal health care, but we're not going to have it as long as the current group of politicians in both parties have received money from Big Pharma, and we need people to do otherwise. Also, are you aware that they are taking, in Great Britain, they're taking plastic, same plastic bottles and wrapping paper, and they're recycling it into little tiny beads, and then they're putting that into their asphalt, and it's hence no longer polluting, and it's stronger, and we got a country full of potholes, and we're not doing that. The things we could do if we had people who really cared about us. But we don't. So before I go to that clip now, I'm going to go over here and say hello to the gentleman who's on the line now. And let's say hello to Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Gary. Good afternoon. How are you today?
Good. Tom, we haven't spoken since the retreat in April. Tell us what you were like before you came. What did you suffer from, and how was that impacting your life?
The biggest reason I came to the retreat was weight loss. Worked a corporate job, literally around the clock, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., all around the clock for over 4 years. And what I wanted to learn at the retreat is like, well, I know my sleep cycles are off, but what techniques can I do? And you and your staff, especially Luann, were great. And it was just, getting more information about a plant-based diet. And it really helped me a lot. I've lost 10 pounds over the last couple of months. And secondly, I had some blood work done, my regular physical done a few weeks ago. My triglycerides have come way down. They were about 100. They're now down to about 65. And so I just can't thank you enough. It was really a life-changing experience, and it was great meeting like-minded people in a beautiful setting in your home, and I can't thank you enough for inviting us in. And I learned a lot, not only from you, Luann, and staff, but also the fellow folks at the retreat. Their stories were really inspiring, and people dealing with much more important issues than me. I got to lose some weight. But, seeing people with cancer, Alzheimer's, all kinds of conditions, I said to myself, hey, you know what, I just got to kick it into gear. And so that's where, I have the tools and the encouragement and the support system, and I can't thank you, Luann, enough, and your staff. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay. We always like to hear people who are making progress, people who are changing and sticking with the change. That's the key. Anybody can change if they go away someplace and are motivated for the moment they're in. It's, can you keep that going when you go home? Can you create a support system with friends or family or a local group where they're also there to encourage you to do the best that you can? That's important. All right. Now let's hear from this. Let's hear from a person who is saying corporations can afford to give people more hourly wages that would help them, get them out of debt, take the pressure off of them having to work 2, sometimes 3 jobs, that we did for over 40 years in the United States. Here's his opinion.
The greatest social technology ever created, but I believe that it is manifestly dishonest to both believe that capitalism is the greatest social technology ever invented, but also believe that the whole system will come tumbling down if capitalists are required to pay their workers enough to get by without food stamps. This is bullshit. There is no excuse for any company in America to pay their workers so little that they need Medicaid and rent assistance. That's not capitalism, that's socialism for the rich. My name is Nick Hanauer, and I'm both a serial technology entrepreneur and venture capitalist, but I'm also a civic activist. Inequality is that every reasonable economy has to have some. That's not in dispute. The question is, how much should you have, and how quickly should it change? And really the sort of thing that got me to start to care about this was realizing in 2007 or so that the top 1% of Americans in 1980 shared only about 8% of national income, but by 2007 that number had grown to almost 22%, while the income of the share of the bottom 50% had fallen from about 17.5 to about 12. And it doesn't take a mathematical genius to see that if that trend continues, we will no longer have a capitalist economy or a democracy, we'll have a feudal system. And to be clear, since then it's only gotten worse. The sort of national trends that have been slowly eroding and eviscerating the middle class have been proceeding for a long time, and that ideological framework got really rolling under Reagan, and essentially the rest is history. And so we have endured 40 years of trickle-down economics, and that is why largely our democracy is disintegrating today. Make no mistake, If you're a middle-class person and feel like the country has left you behind, that is an objective truth. And that didn't happen by accident. Leaders on the left and right have enacted policies that have impoverished most people in the middle and have massively enriched people like me. When people are that angry, they lash out, and we elected the leader who was lashing out too, and he happened to be Donald Trump. He's a narcissistic thug, and the quicker he's gone, the better. But to be absolutely clear and honest, he is not the cause of the trouble. He's a symptom of the trouble. A few months ago, it was just a giant theft from the middle class to the very rich.
Ultimately, what does it mean? It means jobs, 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 jobs.
If there was a shred of truth to the idea that tax cuts for rich people and corporations would somehow increase growth, then we would have had enormous amounts of jobs and growth and wage increases already, because corporate profits are already twice as high as they were. And a tiny fraction of what companies could be investing is actually invested. The vast majority of the cash flows are simply enriching the very rich already. If it was me, I would radically increase corporate tax rates, because I don't think that makes American companies less competitive. I think it makes them more competitive because it forces them to invest in themselves and in the country rather than paying taxes. Rich people no more create jobs than farmers create tomatoes. The economy generates jobs, not rich people. And the more money consumers have, the more jobs that are created, because people buy things, and people like me are required to hire people in order to meet that demand. And so this whole idea that the rich are job creators, again, is just another way of instantiating a narrative that ultimately means we matter and you don't. It's an intimidation tactic masquerading as economic theory. It is exactly the same as claiming that white people are superior to people of color. If you accept that as a biological fact, then there are a bunch of norms that are acceptable, like slavery and other things. The American public needs to come to terms with this and start pushing back against these lies. If people don't have any money, who will buy the stuff? What's happened to our country, and one of the big reasons the middle class has declined, is that in the day, 40 years ago, about 65% of workers were entitled to overtime if they worked more than 40 hours a week. Today, if you're salaried, that number is just 8%. The overtime threshold is something that people really don't understand very well, but it is the indispensable labor protection for middle-class people. And here's why. If you go to work for a Jack in the Box or something like that, and your boss pitches you a fake title like assistant manager, they can make you work 70 hours a week without paying you overtime. And here's why that's terrible, is if you do that 30 or 40 or 50 million times across the economy, you have turned 3 jobs at 40 hours a week into 2 jobs at 60 hours a week millions of times. And that's a way to turn 60 million jobs into 40 million jobs and take 20 million jobs out of the economy. And so nobody makes overtime anymore. The idea that raising wages kills jobs flies in the face of all common sense. There's no earthly reason why Walmart couldn't pay every single worker enough to lead a dignified middle-class life without government assistance. The reason they don't is they choose not to, and no one has confronted that. It's egregious. If you put me in charge of the country, what I would not do is implement the minimum wage geographically, which is what we have largely done. If you go to a small town, it's not dominated by the local department store. It's the Walmart or the Walgreens or the Bank of America or whatever it is that employs people. And so if it was me, what I would do is implement labor standards like the minimum wage, not by geography, but by company size. This is not to penalize the biggest companies, but to hold them to the standard that they should be held to, which is, congratulations, you're a giant, profitable multinational corporation. Now act like one. When I start talking about raising wages to my wealthy friends and CEOs, mostly they look at their shoes. But nobody wants to face the truth. If past is prologue, they're going to wake up after everything gets burned down and then be like, oh, geez, we should do something different. The simple truth is that our country will not be better until people feel better, and they're not going to feel better until they do better, and they're not going to do better, and here's the hard part, until we pay them more. And everything else in politics is either a distraction or a lie. And there are no examples in human history of a society that is that unequal, that is not either in revolution or in an authoritarian police state. We are trending dangerously towards an authoritarian police state today. This is not a partisan issue. The truth is that a thriving middle class creates growth, not the other way around. And we all...
We're out of time, but he is absolutely correct. And I wanted to play that clip because he is a billionaire, successful in business. It doesn't mean that everyone who is a billionaire or successful or rich is insensitive or is exploiting the labor that's allowing them to have those riches. We have to look at that one statement he made above all others, and that is equality. In true progressive philosophy, you strive for equality, men with women and any other gender and race to race, so no one is left out, no one is penalized, and then treat everyone with the same respect that you would expect to be treated. Give the same opportunity to everyone. Leave nobody behind when it comes to looking at just basic human values and human needs. Then we wouldn't have ghettos. Crime would go completely off the chart down. We wouldn't have a society of illiterates. But right now we're in a highly predatory society, and that's unfortunate. But if we stay inactive, it continues. If we join movements to redress these injustices and inequality, then we can make a difference. Go to #WalkProgressive. Every day we're putting articles and films and things that can help us take a step forward. Let's go forward. Let's seek, all of us, to have better lives, healthier lives, happier lives, and more equal lives. Have a nice day, everyone.